the fact that you were here, then you were like the screen doesn't go down as far as I want to go. You were here and then you're here, right? That transition, I think it's very rare that people get through. I think that there's so many lessons in there, not just for people who are struggling, for every single entrepreneur and CEO out there, right? So the great majority of our folks, the folks that I work with, are CEOs. They're high growth entrepreneurs. They are not startups. So I think there's more than just the motivation of hearing that you survived. It is the amazing tactics that you probably dug out of all the way back here that you weren't even focusing on before, that you literally were building the plane as you were going down. Yeah. And you ended up building a jet plane, right? So
yeah, and came out better. It's like going through it, hell. Like there's no pretty way of putting it. It just sucks. But after it was done, because we hit profit about a year ago today in May. Once that happened, I could look back and think, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that happened. I have a better company. I'm a better business person. Our margins tripled. The company's stronger, leaner, meaner. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's amazing. Like, so happy it happened. And it put us into a position to really capitalize on what's happening now with the market.
Yeah. So you know what? Let's just screw this. Let's just start going.
Yeah.
Because this is you and I, with our paths with EO and with everything else that you and I have been through that are similar paths, we could literally just start vomiting up value about everything that's been happening. And I think it would be a mistake to miss all that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I'll give you an introduction later on. I'll do an introduction before the video. That way we don't have to slow us down.
Okay.
But so, hey, let's get into this because one of the things that you had just said was that this was the best thing that ever happened to you. And I have been through several times in my life where there was a catastrophe. And I don't use that word loosely, like a catastrophe where most people would just say, screw it, I'm going to get a job instead of doing what's inside my heart and growing companies, right? But every single time we went through that, we became so much stronger. And it's the process of getting through it as well as the things that you learn along the way. So share, please, some of the stuff that you went through, the lessons that you learned, and everything else.
Yeah. Through the downturn, I mean, like I said, there's no way around it. It just sucks. It's so hard to get through. But when I got through to the other side, I look back and I'm so grateful it happened. Every, stumbling block, every hiccup, every tear, everything was just so valuable, but it's going through it is awful. And, we went from growing, like 20% a year, doing pretty well, knocking on the door of $10 million in annual revenue. And then, the faucet turned off. The entire market went down. And that's devastating, on many levels. And one of them is, kind of a self-worth level and pride. I take pride in my company, and I have a lot of, of what I think of myself is tied to the company, right or wrong. I'm happy when we're doing well, and when we're not doing well, I'm upset about it. So it was a big hit to my ego and everything along the way, and just trying to assess the downward spire as well, because I kind of flip back and forth between being a victim, like, oh, it's the market, it's not me, which is a dangerous spot to be in. And then flipping back to, well, I need to take 100% responsibility for this. And then I beat myself up and say, oh, maybe I just got lucky. I'm not a good businessman. I'm not a good entrepreneur. I got lucky, and here it is. It's coming back and hit me in the face. So it's an emotional roller coaster all the way through. There's just no way around it, I don't think. But if you do make it through the other side, the rewards are amazing.
Hey, so let's talk about that, because like we were saying before we started, the actual interview, A lot of our listeners are CEOs or high growth entrepreneurs, and they I think one of the missing components, one of the things that we forget as we grow, right? We're focused on so many of the tactics initially in order to break the $1 million mark, and then when we reach the 7-figure mark, there's different things that are on our radar, and then our 8-figure mark, and there's different things on our radar, 9-figure mark, it's different things on our radar, and then we forget the stuff over here, right? And there's so many things that kind of um, 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 get overwhelmed in our heads because we have to put out fires, or we have to develop leadership teams, or we have to buy other companies, or whatever the case is. We forget the small stuff. And some of the smallest things that have the greatest impact on our ability to keep moving forward are our emotions, no matter what stage we're at. And it's amazing when I sit down and I talk to some of the people inside of my companies and some of the companies that I advise, that is missing as we grow. So that was something that you spoke a lot about right now, and I think it's compelling. But I want you to touch on it, not just, please, Byron, not just from a business standpoint, but go deeper, because from a family standpoint, how it affected family, because that is your support. I know you and I are, you're very focused on family as well as business. And that's a huge deal. Like, you could, when you go through this, you could lose your business, but you know what? You could lose your family, and you lose your family. And then no matter how many more businesses you build after that, you're kind of less fulfilled.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So please.
Yeah, it all ties together. You know, as an entrepreneur, the business is really who I am, and so unfortunately, you brought that home. You know, my, whatever you want to call it, my depression, my, you know, just being upset about the business, I brought home, and that's tough. And my spouse had to deal with that. She's great with it, but you know, she had to deal with that, and even my kids. And, you know, for me personally, I mean, seriously, at one point I was just thinking, God, if I only lost my business, that would be great. But I had a $500,000 SBA loan, a buyout loan. But by the way, I bought out my business partner like a month before this downturn happened. Perfect timing. And so if I lost the business, they'd come, the SBA, you know, the loan, the collateral is my own home, my own real estate. Every dollar of my net worth was tied up. So if that business crashed, everything else would crash too. And so I had to go through this mental anguish of, oh my gosh, we're going to have to move into an apartment. We're going to have to move out of the school district. We're going to have to, like, really upset, you know, disrupts the family environment and the kids. Yeah. You know, no more dance classes, no more dance, you know, all these other sports that get expensive, you know, have to get rid of. And we were trimming that back anyways. But if the business went under, it would have been even worse. You know, the biggest thing that got me through it on the emotional level was talking. And it sounds so obvious, right? But talking to not just my family and friends, but also to business owners such as you. And that did two things. One, it got it out of my head, because that's the worst spot for it to just twirl around over and over. And so it helped me emotionally, but it also helped me with the strategy of getting out of this too. And so sometimes I would have an hour conversation with someone, and in hindsight, I look back and they didn't do any talking. I did all the talking, and I'd walk away going, wow, okay, that helped me a lot. And now I have a better, clearer direction on where to go. So it was also strategic in that way. And another thing with talking with other business owners and friends was, I would take one piece of information from someone that wasn't really that valuable, but then I'd have another conversation with someone else, and
put them together.
Maybe it was or wasn't valuable. But when I put those two together, I'm like, oh my God, that's how we can, whatever, like, you know, increase the gross margin on the products, whatever it is. Because there's a lot of strategic things that we had to do during that turnaround. But just being able to talk through it and justifying what you're doing to someone else, it's super powerful, both on an emotional level as well as strategic.
Hey, so I got a really hard question for you, I think, because I agree. Talking is huge. Very quickly, without getting too in depth, I went through some turmoil. What was it? 6 years ago or so. And even though at the time I still had, I had my board, of directors has been with me since 2003. So however long that is, it's quite a long time. And these guys are friends and colleagues and brothers, right? They are a powerful force in my life and aid in helping me make decisions. I'm used to talking through things with them, but I was going through like just shit at this time and embarrassed to even talk to them about it for months.
Yeah.
So I think my question to you is, how did you get over the hump, the discomfort of admitting shit was hitting the fan in your life and you needed help? Because that's a huge thing that I think it prevents a lot of people from growing to the next level. And it did me for several months. And then as soon as I had that meeting and I opened up, I was like ready to go into tears. I was like, not because of anything other than the fact that I felt so much greatness come from these people about something that it was just weird to admit that somebody at my level was having these issues.
Yeah. Wow. There's so much there to unpack. I think there's different levels. And the first level is just putting your head in the sand and ignoring the problems. And that's to yourself, not to anyone else at that level. You're just in denial, if you will. The market will come back. There's all these stories we tell ourselves. And so that's kind of stage one. Once you pull your head out of the sand and say, okay, I have a problem. And whether I caused it or not, irrelevant, I have a big problem, how to deal with it. That's the next stage. And then after that is, talking to it, through friends. And like you, I'm kind of known as, hey, a successful entrepreneur, and look at all the stuff that Byron's done and all this. And so now I'm going to those same people who really look up to me, and I'm asking for help, or at least I'm shedding all my grief with what's going on. And that's a tough conversation to have, because I don't think it was that I thought I would damage my reputation. It was probably, maybe there's a little bit there, but it's less about that. For me, it was just more about, it's hard to be vulnerable in these situations, and just to be raw and to share it. And honestly, sometimes I'd be like, okay, I'm going to have this conversation with my friend. Don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Literally, it was that bad. And sometimes I would cry, sometimes I wouldn't. It didn't really matter. When I was done, oh my God, I feel so good.
Yeah.
Right? Even if we didn't accomplish anything, just getting it off my chest. So it is difficult going to friends, or even maybe they're not a friend, but they're an expert in this field,
Mm-hmm.
and just being vulnerable and saying, listen, whether, my business is in trouble, here's a few ideas I have. Do you have any feedback for me? It's tough, but it's so needed. And you feel so good afterwards too.
Yeah. And I think you feel good to the extent that you allow yourself to be open to one of two things. Number one, getting tactics or ideas for tactics, or just looking at it as, I got a chance to talk, like you were saying before. Because if you go into, and this is something that I find when I'm talking to my team or when people come to me, I find that if you go into a meeting and you specifically are only there for tactics, no matter what the meeting is about, and you don't get the tactics you're looking for, you almost look at it like a failure of a meeting, and you lose 80% of the value. There could be tremendous value in just hearing yourself go through it, verbalizing all the pieces of the puzzle, hearing little pieces, because when you have somebody who's a good listener and they echo things back to you, and you now hear it from somebody else's voice, you're like, oh shit, now I see what the hell I'm doing up here. And it's not good. Like, I got to switch that shit around, but I would have never known it had I not heard it echoed back to me.
Yeah. And some advice or experience shares that I heard, I listened and I kind of dismissed it politely. Okay.
Yeah.
But then I kept hearing it from other people, and I'm like, hold on. I'm seeing trends here.
Yeah.
I've had more than 2 or 3 people tell me the same damn thing. I better pick this apart. Let me peel this apart. Let me go deeper on this, because there might be something there that I dismissed the first time.
Hey,
so
Byron,
talking to multiple people.
Do you make it a habit in your company to do 360 reviews?
Define that real quick for me.
So a 360 review where your team or people that you trust in your life answer questions about you, and
Okay.
the same questions are detailed, like they detail their answers about how they see you. And then you grab all that and you get a chance to see how you're coming across as a leader, as a father, as a partner in your business, or in every capacity that you fill. Did you
No,
ever do that? You didn't? Wow.
have not, but I can see so much value in that,
Oh, well, to the right
especially
people.
because
Yeah.
as a boss, for example, you're the boss, right?
Mhm.
People really have a hard time coming to you with issues that maybe, you need to hear, even
It
though
was
you
so they
don't
have to
want to
be
hear.
anonymous. So these papers are anonymous, by the
Yeah, I
way.
bet.
Otherwise, you never get the truth from a team member or an
Yeah.
employee because they're afraid to be fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, or they just don't want to say anything bad about you. But when they're
Hmm.
given the opportunity to do that, it sheds a lot of light. Anyway, interesting. I'm happy to share that our resource
Yeah.
after the call if you'd like. But so all right, so let's go into tactics. Let's go into the shit that really moves the needle, right? Because what you had to do is the needle was coming down on you really freaking hard, and you had to move that needle back up so that you could, which means stopping the bleeding, stop all the expenses that are not necessary, which we all have a tremendous number of expenses that we don't even think about when times are good.
Hmm.
Right. So there is a, from a venture capital standpoint, when we go in and we look at companies, there's so many things that we look at and we say, oh my God, you've got so much play here that if we just got rid of this stuff, that all goes to your bottom line. But most entrepreneurs don't even look at that. So it's stopping that, and then it's nudging everything else in a smart, strategic way.
Yeah.
So let's
Yeah.
hit on that stuff.
Yeah. So cutting costs was obviously a big part of it and needs to be a big part of any turnaround. And so, we took all of our costs, put it on a spreadsheet and basically color coded it, red, yellow, green.
Mhm.
And, so the red are the obvious expenses to cut off. Like those are easy. The yellow are what you're not sure of. The green is kind of infrastructure, critical operation type stuff. And then we went back and picked apart that yellow even further and cut it in half. And we even did the same for the green.
Oh,
There
really?
were, because like rent, well, I got to pay rent, right? Not really. You can go virtual.
Yeah.
Okay. And so that spreadsheet changed over time too, as the slide became longer and worse and we're continue to lose money. We started looking at that, the bucket that I thought you could never cut, and we cut it. And so there's a lot there. Unfortunately, letting people go is a big part. It was our biggest overhead, and it
Mhm.
usually is for most
For everybody.
businesses.
Yeah.
And it was heartbreaking. I had employees that had been with me for 9 years. I know their children's names. I know the sports. It's so hard to go through that on both sides.
Mhm.
But it was gut wrenching and it's hard. But the bottom line is your business has to survive. And if I have to let, 5 people go to keep the other 10 people, that's what has to be done. So letting people go was a big one, which falls under costs.
Yeah. Hey, so let me interrupt you just so that we get this down. Your number one responsibility inside your
Yeah.
company is to the company,
Yeah.
right? And I think a lot of people forget that. And when we remind ourselves of that, making certain decisions becomes infinitely easier. It's never going to be easy to let good people go. It's for me, I don't even like letting bad people go sometimes.
I know.
it's a difficult thing. And it's tough also letting expenses go
Yeah.
that you think I might still use that stuff later on.
Yeah.
But in other case, understanding that we have a fiduciary responsibility to the company, no matter what size your company is. If you were smart enough when you started this whole thing to set it up as a company, LLC, LLP, a C Corp, S Corp, whatever the heck it is, then you have a fiduciary responsibility. Your goal is to grow that company in an honest, ethical, moral, legal way, no matter what you have to do. So every single day, it's got to be growth, not I know their kids. They've been with me for a long time. If they are not an asset right now to the company, it is a crappy thing to say. And I apologize, I'm saying this, but it is the truth, right? We are the guardians of our company.
Yeah, it's your obligation. You have to take care of the company, and by doing so, you're taking care of other jobs too. and you're, assuring the survival of your company so that 6 months, 2 years, 5 years down the road, you still have this company still employing people
Right.
and providing value to the marketplace. So it's your responsibility. You have to do it. And those are tough conversations. And there's nothing I can say that will make that easier other than know that on the other side, it's better. I will say though, whenever I did let people go, because we went from 25 employees down to 5.
Wow, that's a jump.
Yeah.
Was that an eye twitch I saw when you said that?
That hurts. But I will say that when I let people go, the vast majority of people, and who were the great employees at the time, we'd find all kinds of skeletons in the closet. We found all kinds of inefficiencies.
Yes.
And that's something else that we did. So we cut costs. Real quick, a strategy for cutting costs, like software, for example. Say you think you need it. Well, could you go 30 days without it? Probably. Then do that. And after 30 days, I bet you won't bring it back.
Yeah.
Okay. So just a temporary pause. If that's what has to get, for you to sign off on it, do that. Okay.
Yeah. Great
So cutting costs was big. We also worked on margins. So we went from 550 SKUs, 550 products down to 170. Well, you can guess which 170 products we had. They're the highest margin. Oh, yeah. They're the top sellers. They're easy to access. They kept our business simple. So we cut product lines. We cut a lot of products out. And that did a couple of things. We got our gross margin up 50%, which is amazing. Okay, by doing that. But it also simplified our business because now I don't have to have a rock star in purchasing to handle 170 products. We can do that on a spreadsheet fairly easy. Whereas 500 or 600, you got to have a pretty strong employee to be able to handle all that. So margins were a big thing. And then we also just simplified the business and made it way efficient, wicked efficient, as we called it. And so there were positions that we just eliminated. Our IT department was 3 people, almost 4, because we're looking at hiring someone. We went down to 0.
Oh, wow.
Okay? We did that by saying, okay, we actually did that by eliminating a revenue source. So when we went from like 9 million down to 3 million over about a year, some of that was self-inflicted. Meaning we literally took out a chunk of revenue, those over $1 million a year, and said, we don't want this. Why? Because I looked at the profit margin per channel and it was about break even. Later to find out we were actually negative. Go figure. So we eliminated that. And by doing that, we eliminated a lot of software. We eliminated the need to have an IT department. We just have some Shopify, which runs itself.
Yeah.
We also went into finance. Same story there. We had 4 people in finance. Okay. I know. Super
At
manual.
9 million, you had 4 people.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So
that was over capacity. Probably.
It was. And so I just went in there and just cleared house. And besides the people, like all the software. So we put everything into API automation, got on QuickBooks Online. And we basically, everything was automated. So now I went from 4 people to half of a person, in-house bookkeeper. Okay. That's amazing. Yeah. And it's from 9 million to 3. So it's a smaller company, but really it's accounting. It doesn't get that much smaller. It's still, you still have to count all the beans.
Right. Every single time we have ever gone in and invested in a company, not my companies, but when we invest in a company, and we go in there and we make these cuts like you're talking about right now, revenue may come down, but it makes us this concentrated source of power, which is so much easier to scale. Like, so it may be like this, boom, and it's a hockey stick every single time. We'll come down and boom, we'll go like this. It's not like this ever. It's a hockey stick move. And so was that similar to what you experienced also?
Yeah. I mean, we took, again, we went from 9 to 3, but our profit when we were done, which we ended about May of 19, so about a year ago, our profit was the same as it was before the downturn as a dollar amount. Yeah. That's crazy. So our percentage tripled.
Yeah.
Okay. And even marketing. Now, I'm not the one who says you should cut marketing. In fact, I'll just say don't cut marketing. But what we did, almost to the same thing, you've got this core. Well, let's start from scratch. So you start up a company, you start marketing. Well, when you start a Facebook campaign or a Google or whatever, you're not spending much, and it becomes very profitable here. And as soon as you start scaling it, it becomes less profitable. And eventually you can scale so much that it's not profitable.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay, because all the customers you're gathering are, and their lifetime value is a big payoff.
Yeah.
So it makes sense. You do need to scale your marketing, but as you grow the marketing, you're bringing in less qualified people. Okay, more people, which is what you want,
Mm-hmm.
but less qualified. So the ROI goes down. It's a normal trend. It's the way it should work. We did the opposite when we were scaling back. We took away all the marketing that was close to break even. And if it's break even, you're actually losing money. I'm just telling you, it's just how it works. And we took away all the marketing that was not the best marketing. And we came down to this core of this marketing that was actually profitable. Because it's still in there, even if you're losing money. Even if your company's losing money, there's elements in your company that are still working. You just have to scrape away all the fat that's on top, and you find it under there. And that's the whole idea between marketing or even revenue channels. Like I said, we had all these revenue channels, and we took each one and chunked it out and said, okay, what is the rough, because this is a tough, difficult process to do, but what's the rough margin or profit on each revenue channel we had? And we had some that were really good, and we had some that were really bad. So we got rid of the ones that were bad. Mm-hmm. And then we took the ones that were really good and optimized them even further. So they become more profitable.
Yeah. So now you are, let's project into the future. 2 years down the road, you're acquiring companies, you're cleaning them up, and you're building a portfolio.
Yeah.
So, well, that's what this changed you to do.
Yeah. Well, again, a year ago, we got to profitability.
Yeah.
May of 19, $85 in profit, best $85 in my life. But then, after that, June, July, we started hitting this 15% or triple what we used to in the profit margin, net profit margin. And so I just assumed we were going to ride that out for the next 4 or 5 years. The survival market is predicated on the political cycle. So whenever there's a Democrat in the office, the survival market spikes. Whenever there's a Republican in the office, it comes down. So that's why I came down those 2 or 3 years. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of assumed, or at least planning for the worst for the market, that Trump would win. And so I'm thinking 4 or 5 years of this just not really growing, but we're very profitable. And I was working on stepping myself out of the company, and I'm already out of the day-to-day. And I just assumed that would be the next 4 or 5 years of survival frog. Yeah. And then coronavirus came. Okay. Horrible thing in every direction I look, except for one, and that's my business going up. And so really, if this scenario would have happened 3 years ago when I was still growing, fat and happy, high expenses, I wasn't efficient, had people on staff that probably shouldn't be there, all these other elements, I don't know if how we would have handled this growth. We honestly might have imploded. But now we're lean and mean. The people that are on the team are amazing. And we're prime for the market to rise back up. And so we're actually seeing a lot better results than most of our competitors are right now, because we really retooled the whole business to be ultra efficient, high profit margins, everything. And now we're just pouring gas on the fire. And now we're on this big upswing over the next, couple of years at least, I would think.
Yeah. Hey, so as you're going through all this, as you're living through this over the last, year or so, can you define specific metrics that you found were the most important to keep your finger on, or was it all over the board?
No, there was definitely some key metrics and KPIs that we focused on. One was the gross margin. Okay, so that's just the product and how much margin it has before overhead hits it.
Yeah.
And then the net, and that's a combination of that gross margin and then having low expenses, and just forgot about revenue. Like I said, we cut $1 million off the top line and made our business smaller, and we're so much better off for it. So we didn't really focus on that. It was just about the bottom line.
Yeah, I'll
And
tell you,
then,
I don't mean to interrupt you. Companies that come to me and they start talking to me about revenue this, revenue that, and they're talking gross, I gloss over. Like they're measuring the wrong things already. I don't know that I even want to have that conversation right now.
Yeah.
Like I need you to understand what metrics are before you start telling me, oh my God, I have a $10 million company. I have a $20 million company, but I'm still living with my folks or whatever. That's probably an exaggeration, but still.
No, it happens. And so the other KPIs were, really just an overall emphasis on the financials. Now, before this downturn hit me and my company, I was good with finances and, could read the P&L and I did that, but nothing compared to what I can do now. I mean, night and day difference. I have excelled in the finance area, not because I enjoyed it, not because I was good at it, but because I had a gun to my head and I had to figure this shit out. And so I did. And a friend of mine gave me some great advice along the way. He said, stop managing your business during this crisis. Stop managing your business on the P&L and instead focus on the cash flow forecast. Yeah. And that was the best advice I got because I was all about the P&L, and month after month, we'd see these $50,000 loss, $100,000 loss. I mean, it's just devastating to watch and to see, but I was like, but we're still in business. Interesting. Well, the reason is we had inventory. We came into my crisis heavy on inventory, and that's what we lived off of. So the cash flow forecast, while it's a royal pain in the butt to actually do, especially if you really nail it and do it accurately, it's so beneficial for you and for the company. And as I jokingly say, it was my sleeping pill. Okay. Because while I was going through my downturn, I had the mindset of, well, crap, I'm probably going to go out of business based on what I see, but I can look at this cash flow forecast and I'm not going out of business in the next 3 weeks. And that gave me the ability to relax and go to sleep and get through to the next day. And then the next week, oh, look, we can make it another 3 weeks. And it was just that vision of being able to see, things are really bad, but I will be able to make payroll next week and the next and the third week. After that gets fuzzy, but that was so powerful for me.
Yeah, those are rough nights. I remember when I very first started in business back in the 90s, I got in a little bit in trouble with my merchant because I tried to pay payroll with my credit cards, going in and swiping my own credit cards in my POS machine. So it's nice to be able to look back and laugh on that. But those were tough, very sweaty, anxious nights. Hey, one of the things that I focus on a lot inside of our companies is trying to get the focus away from just numbers and put them onto actions. Because I'm a huge believer that we are able to motivate people a lot more, our team members, and even myself, a lot more when we know without a shadow of a doubt which actions move the numbers the most, right? Move the right numbers the most. And then we, define the right actions for each department. We define the right actions for me as one of the employees in each one of my companies. And then if everybody focuses on the right actions, we together are moving the company towards our goal, right? So what are the most important actions now that you're through all this? What are the most important actions that you believe you've got? Maybe the top 2 or 3.
During the downturn?
No, you now as a CEO. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, for us, again, it's about margins because we're a physical based business. And so margins are definitely one. Watching those margins, watching what refunds do to the margin, and keeping a very close eye on that one. Another one would be labor efficiency ratio. I call it.
So
go ahead.
What you're doing is you're defining numbers to track.
Okay.
I'm asking, what would be the actions that you or your team would have to take in order to make sure that that margin is there, or whatever number you're trying to reach? What are the key actions that are most important for you to know about?
Yeah. Well, then in that example with the margins, it would be about sourcing the right products
Yeah,
and cutting the products that aren't making the cut,
that's
this
huge.
particular
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah. So
And
that's huge. Yeah,
it's so hard to shrink a company for all the mental reasons, because we're entrepreneurs, we're growers, we're drivers. And so to shrink a company is just super humbling. And to take my 500 SKUs down to 170, I had to let products go that were my pet projects and I love, and so it's tough to do,
you have
but
an
that
ego.
was a focus.
You have an ego.
A
I never
little
knew
bit.
that.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why we click so well, because
Yeah.
our egos complement each other.
Yeah.
Um,
Another action is the employees.
yeah,
And so I hit on labor efficiency ratio, but I won't go back to that. But that's just more of a data number,
mhm,
driven thing. But the employees on being efficient. So, taking a look at each employee or each department and knowing what actions do we need to take to make this, crazy efficient. Not just efficient, like we have to take it way beyond that.
yeah,
And working with the employees on priority lists, because as most businesses, but certainly in online businesses such as mine, there's a lot of shiny objects out there. Okay. And so we work very diligently on our priority list. And what that looks like, it sounds so simple, but this is powerful. Priority list has 10 items on it. There's 3 at the top, and then there's the next 7. And then there's a dotted line where there's a whole bunch below that. In the top 3, hopefully we get movement every day on. The bottom 7, they fight their way up to the top, but either way they get action and movement every week. But here's the key to this list is not if, but when the next really cool idea comes up, okay, and it will, it has to compete against that list.
yeah.
And we have to say, okay, if it's that great of an idea, which one of these 10 items is going to get removed so we can put this new item in there? And 9 times out of 10, it can't. And so it has to live below the line. And living below the line just means it has to fight its way up to the top, and one of the 10 have to get done.
Mhm.
And this is also true. And I tell my employees, next time Byron comes to you as the boss and so excited and so enthusiastic about this new idea and says, okay, now go run with this, you're to say, stop.
Yeah,
Which one, here's my priority list, Byron, which one of these 10 items do you want me to remove so I can get to this really cool idea? Again, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't happen.
yeah.
It
That's
has to
huge.
live below the line.
Hey, so what did it take to empower your team members to be able to have the courage to do that? Because um, there's a difference in the mindset of a team member, where we have employees, and then we have leaders in training, and then we have leaders, right? Leaders is what you're defining right now. Somebody who has the the core competency to be able to say, "Hey, Byron, that's cool. I love that idea. Let me detail that down now. Does it fit over here? Which one of these actions am I going to take off of my list, because this is my priority list," right? And whereas an employee would say, "Well, you told me to do that, so I did that, and I stopped everything else on my list in order to do that." So
Yeah.
how do you, where does that fit in there? How do you develop that leader?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about? Do you
Yeah.
have
Well,
leaders?
so there's 2 things. One, I'm giving them permission up front. So when I do the training with them on the priority list and how it works, I give them that, what I just told you.
Yeah.
Is like, I need you to stop me and say, great idea or bad idea, whatever, but where does it fit in my current priority list? So I'm giving them that out. I'm giving them the authority to say, Byron, let's slow this down. Let's find out where it goes.
Yeah.
So that's one part. So I'm giving them permission to do that. But the second part is I'm way more careful with my next amazing idea, right? Which might not be so amazing, because I get excited and I want to go launch this idea.
Yeah.
But I've been more careful with it, and I'll reference their priority list. I'll say, here's this really great idea, but you need to find a spot on your priority list where it makes sense. And if we need to wait on it, we will. And so as the leader or as the owner, I also have to take ownership of this shiny object syndrome
Mhm.
and let them know that we will find a spot for this. It might not be right now. Don't go chase the project I just gave you. Stick to your priority list.
Yeah, a book where we detail all the things that don't fit on our lists. We do top 5 lists. You're doing a top
Okay.
10, which you have me reevaluating, even though I've been doing this for
Oh,
several
5 is healthier. If you
What's
can
that?
stick with 5, we just found that we couldn't, but 5 is better.
um, um, where was I going with that? So we have a place where we document. The process that we use is, okay, so if it doesn't fit here right now currently, then let's document it in full, which may take us whatever 15 minutes or so, 30 minutes. Document everything that we think about this one idea. If it does not fit, we still have this area where we could go back and look for these things. So it's not lost, but it allows us the ability to take that weight off of our head that we're constantly thinking about, should that have been on there? Where do you keep that stuff?
Well, so let me just hit real quick. What you just said is so important, because the below the dotted line, I always say that's where the magic happens, because
Oh
all
yeah.
these ideas, if you don't document it, you don't put it below the line or wherever it belongs, it'll run circles in your head. And oh, I don't want to forget this idea. Oh, this is important. No, it's fine. It can live below the line. Okay. So it releases your mind of this freedom of, now I can move on with my current priority list and I don't have to dwell on this other project that I'm not doing.
Yeah, and I think
But
you as a CEO have, or we as CEOs have a responsibility to do that for our team, because everybody has their own amount of mental bandwidth.
Mhm.
If we don't manage other people's mental bandwidth, if we don't help them manage their mental bandwidth, a lot of people don't understand how to do that. So they will believe that, all right, it's not on my top 10, so I'm cool. But if it's gestating in there, it is reducing your mental bandwidth, the amount of sharpness that you have to move on these other 10. So
Yeah.
there has to be a way to kind of vomit that stuff up in one place
And
in an
document it.
organized way.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and as an employee too, if the last 10 ideas that you shared with the boss all got shot down, where they really didn't, but they weren't implemented, you may stop coming up with ideas
Oh,
because
geez.
you're frustrated. Well, I welcome every idea, and I said put it below the line and we'll reevaluate it later. So at least they've got it out of their head. They got acknowledgement for a pretty cool idea. Let's work on that later. And then the ideas keep going. And I do that for my own brain too. I don't want to discourage my brain. So all these ideas, believe me, below there's 10, and then there's this list that's 15 pages long below that. So
Oh,
and
so
and
you
things
have a short
fight
list.
so they fight their way up to the top.
Yeah.
But you had asked, where do we document this? So what we do is we use OneDrive. And so everything's online because we're a virtual
Okay.
company. And each employee has their own priority list. Okay. And
These
so
priority lists are all on OneDrive also.
so everything's in one spot.
Okay.
All the employees and all the managers can see each other's priority list, which is also very important.
Mhm.
And so each individual has their own priority list. Now, some managers have their own priority list and their department
Yep.
priority
I got it.
list.
Same
So
here.
sometimes it doubles up,
Mhm.
but it's all shared online. And then what I do is once a week, I will go to each manager, not each employee, but each manager, and review their priority list just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Because, as the owner, you're at the top here, you can see all the different departments. And sometimes that bird's eye view allows you to see things that one manager won't see because he or she doesn't know what's going on in accounting or in IT or whatever. You're seeing it all. So you may alter that priority list for someone based on the company's goals and the company's direction as you see fit.
Yeah. Hey, the way we organize that is we have something called a process org chart inside of each one of our companies. And that gives us the ability as an entire team to see each person where they're fitting, where their boxes. Inside of every one of the boxes is not just the person's name and title, but also the top bullet points of what their responsibilities are in the company. So that if there is ever a new project that comes up and we need a new bullet point, we know exactly what box it fits in, right? And then underneath their box is their top 5 list, like the current top 5 list. If those top 5 things don't relate to the things inside that box, it's a problem, right? But anybody could always take a look at this and be very clear on where does my energy need to go into my bullet points? Well, what's most important here? It's my top 5 list right now, right? And we have a whole process on how to figure out our top 5 every single day. But that just gives us a visual. I'm a very visual person. Maybe it's just me that needs to see that in the companies, but it helps. I think it makes everybody more effective. Maybe just me.
It would help me.
Yeah.
I'm visual as well.
Hey, let's move to culture, because your culture, I'm going to try to put this nicely, must have been wonderful and then shitty and then bulletproof, right? So what the heck, like when you went through the downtime, how did you maintain a culture with the team members that were staying, and which I'm sure included keeping a relationship with those people who were exiting the company, right? Maybe helping them find other positions, which is the way we usually handle things, or creating an amazing referral, a reference letter, whatever it takes. But how did you maintain culture, and how do you build culture?
Yeah. Well, culture is very important to us. And so I make that statement because it's not in every company.
I know.
And for us, it's very important. We follow, the EOS traction model. So culture is super important to us. And before, I would dare to say our culture actually got stronger and better during the downtime. And that's an amazing thing to me. Yeah. So it was good and strong before, but it got better. And that was despite major layoffs it wasn't like one day we laid off 20 people. It was like a death by 1,000 needles. So, 2 or 3 here or there, 4 or 5, so it was in chunks all the way through, just to make sure I really tortured myself in the company. But, when I would lay off whatever, more, 2 or 3 or 5 people, we would always have a group meeting afterwards. And they would see that, I'm visibly upset. I mean, and I guess that's almost a different topic, but the fact that, I need to be the leader. I need to be calm under pressure. I need to show that I have confidence in what I'm doing and what the company is doing going forward. But if you're always just positive about this when you're going through a downturn, I think that's a mistake.
Oh yeah, I agree.
My team saw me cry. My team saw me throw shit against the wall. I mean, I had my moments. I was human. And I showed that, okay? And that was important to my team. And our culture actually, I think, got better over time, because it's almost like when you break up with someone, romantically, and then you get back together, somehow it's a little bit stronger at that point. And I think that's kind of what happens. Like when you go through a lot of difficult times with people, those who survive after that are like so sold on the company and so sold on the culture and everything, because not just because they survived, but because they went through those difficult times with you together as a team. And so some of the things we did, besides what I told you about group meetings and being vulnerable and just expressing your emotions, and that was the 5% time, right? The other 95% of the time, it's being a leader and being confident and being positive and optimistic. But you have to go to that negative side too to be human. But in addition to that, it was not letting go of the company culture, focusing on that. We even tweaked it along the way. Efficiency is now a part of our culture, where before it wasn't there. So it tweaked and it got better. And I'll tell you what, the team that we have now they're rock stars. And so I think it really helped. What's the Glassdoor? So the website Glassdoor that keeps
where all the team members can go and chat about
So obviously when you let go of 20 people, you get thrown under the bus on Glassdoor. But each time that would happen, I would get on there and I wouldn't defend the company. It was just so genuine, I'd be like, yeah, you're right. We had to let people go and it's awful. And you're right, I could have done X and Y better. And we're making major strides towards that. And here's what we're doing. And they'd write a 3-sentence or 4-sentence, rant. And I would do like this 4 or 5 paragraph explanation of it. And when we went back to hiring people, they mentioned that. Mm-hmm. They said, I saw that, and I saw the culture within that. And that really impressed me, even though now you have a 2-star out of 5 stars on Glassdoor. And then we kept hiring on culture as well.
You personally replied?
Personally, me, yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Goodness. I mean, it's not like we had a ton of them. So it's, one every other week or something. It was, it's well worth my time to do that, for sure.
I agree, but it's rare that a leader goes out there and does that, as opposed to maybe dictates it or tell somebody else to please go take care of that.
Yeah. And it's going to come across wrong.
Oh yeah.
Because they'll be defensive, and you can't be that way. You have to acknowledge, yeah, you're pretty much right. And here's what we're doing about it.
Yeah. It doesn't really make a difference, I don't think, what stage of growth we're at, whether we are in growth mode or in a downward spiral or in a stagnant mode with business. There's a lot of obstacles that come up, a lot of challenges that we face. And there could be a tremendous number of challenges as we're growing, right? New competitors, we're on the radar of new, bigger competitors, and they try to hurt us, or onboarding C-level teams, or whatever the case is. There's a lot of obstacles if you're going down. But I think one of the differentiators between a company that scales and one that just kind of ekes by and grows a little bit here and there is their ability to predict obstacles, yeah, or set up systems so that when they encounter a challenge, they have a system for overcoming that challenge and breaking through. And you've obviously been through a ton of challenges. So I don't know if you've ever gotten this question before or thought about it, but I'm sure you have. You live, eat, and breathe the answer to this. So how do you handle this?
Well, I agree. You have to be able to predict the potential problems coming up and have a plan for them. Even if it's not a great plan, at least you've thought through what's going on. And again, maybe there is no easy solution to it, but just the fact that you've talked through it and you've outlined it and you've brainstormed on it, I think is so valuable. So when it comes up, you're still like, oh crap, but at least you're like, all right, let me go find my notes on what we discussed around that issue.
Yeah.
And a phrase that really stuck with me during my downturn was this, and that is, bad things don't happen to me. They happen for me. They happen for me to get better, to be smarter, to become a better business person, to establish a better company, because every adversity brings its own gift at the end. And I don't just say that because it's fun to say or cool to say. I mean, it really is absolutely true. And that bad and challenging things happen for me to learn and grow. Doesn't mean you have to enjoy it, but you have to be actively looking for what's good in this scenario. And that's difficult to do, but it takes your brain from this position of being victim or, problem focused mentality to one of solution based, mm-hmm, or even opportunity based. And I really think, the subconscious mind is so powerful, and the universe, I believe, works. Meaning, if I'm focused on what's good about this bad scenario, what are the opportunities that could come down the road a year or two, later because of this bad scenario, my brain's looking for it, and the universe will find it and it'll give it to you and deliver it to you. Whereas the opposite is, poor me, let me just focus on the negative, and just focusing on that, guess what? Universe will bring you that as well. They'll bring you more bad shit.
Yeah.
And so you have to be careful. It isn't seeing life or the business through rose-colored glasses all the time. That's not what I'm saying. But you need to find a way to get through this mentally. And that's a very powerful way to do that. And so you come out the other end a stronger person. And again, you're looking Okay. You're attracting these things that are going to bring you, more opportunity in the future by doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree 100%. All right. Hey, listen, I have one last question. Then I want to respect your time and wrap up. And it's something that you and I never talked about before, but I'm a big believer that we keep ourselves guided by the questions that we ask ourselves. And I think that there's certain questions that every leader asks themselves. And a lot of times we don't realize that we're asking ourselves this stuff on a regular basis, or that we're asking our team this stuff on a regular basis. But there have been, when we do these 360 reviews that I talked to you about earlier on, a lot of times people will joke around and they'll say, yeah, Chris is known for the guy who always asks this question or this question or this question or whatever. And that's great. It trains people to come to me in a different way, or it trains them to think in a different way, or it trains me to focus on the right things during the course of the day. For example, one of the questions that I not only ask on a regular basis, myself and my team members, but we have in plaques in every freaking office that we've got. It is, what is the most important use of my time right now? Like what, right this minute, so that it doesn't make a difference what you got going on. If you feel like you're not being ultra productive and you just ask yourself that question, it will refocus you. Maybe it just changes your path from here to here, but it puts you on a better path. So my question would be, can you share a couple of questions that keep you guided, that you believe are real powerful questions?
Yeah. Everyone has way too much on their to-do list, of course. And so often I'll ask myself, what is the one or two things I can do that will move the needle? Whatever that means. It could be solving a crisis, that's moving the needle, or it could be an ROI strategy, whatever it is. But what are the top two things that I can do to move the needle? I also quite often ask, how can I be more efficient at this task? Does this task even need to be done, right? I'm a firm believer in good is good enough. And so a lot of projects I'll work on, I'll do them 80 or 90% good, but I'm not going to do them 100% good, because that last 10% takes forever. And the ROI return on it is very small, meaning just whatever the benefit of that project is. And another thing I really focus on is what's good about this scenario or this situation. And the knee-jerk reaction is usually nothing, this sucks. But what I will often do is brainstorm the answer, because if I'm just trying to find one thing, it's harder. If I'm like, okay, what's good about this scenario that just happened? Or how can we as a company, find opportunity in this situation? But the key is to brainstorm it. And so I'll come up with 20 or even 30 answers to that question. And what happens is the first 5 or 10, they're pretty solid, right? And then the next 10 or 15 are just like a joke. Like I'm just literally trying to get to my 30 answer goal, okay? Some of them are just stupid. But towards the end, when your brain is just like stuck, it'll start coming up with some really good ideas. And again, maybe number 18 is not that good of an idea. And number 3 is not that good of an idea. But if you put those together and you connect the dots, maybe that's the answer. So this brainstorming works really well for me. And quite often I'll do it in the evening with a drink, and it even really helps the juices flow. So I'll do that quite often as well. Yeah. I agree with you. I think answering questions, or the quality of your questions, is so important.
Yeah.
I really am a firm believer in that. And so always trying to ask what's good in this, what can we learn from this is another big one.
Yeah.
And how could this potentially be an opportunity for us in the next year or two? By the way, that last part of the question is very important, because your brain will just be like, there's nothing good about this. Okay, what about in 2 years? Well, in 2 years, maybe half of my competition's gone. Maybe the market has shifted and now we're more profitable because the product mix that we have is better than the competition. Maybe customers are spending more, whatever, right? It's just, when you say a couple of years, it allows your brain to open up and really find the creative answers.
Yeah. And it also, I think, is a big it's a big mental shift for a lot of people because it is difficult for some people to think 2 years out. It's difficult for some people to think 1 year out.
Yeah.
I find that leaders or really high growth people in business are looking further out than just meeting this month's numbers or this week's numbers. Whereas, the lower we go down the totem pole, which is not a bad thing, right? We have great employees down here, but the further we go over from the C level, they're focused on today. What do I have to do today? What do I have to do to meet these numbers this week? Up here, we're looking at it and we're saying, if we meet the numbers this week, how does that affect this month? How does that affect this quarter? How does that affect this year? How does that affect our main target? Because down here, there could be some bad decisions when we're focused on just today or just this week. We could run a huge promotion. We could run 50% off of digital products and say, geez, we freaking crushed it. And up here, we're saying, you just killed all of our sales for next week and the week after because you discounted everything. So we're looking a little bit more global. So I agree. Looking further out is huge. Hey, so I have been writing down notes over here, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe 5. I've got a lot of notes, but I think 5 things that I want to just highlight that were huge and that I think were game changers for you. Because I think by highlighting them, it reinforces it in my head and everybody else who watches this. Number 1, talking was profoundly important to you. I agree with it. I don't believe anybody grows at all in business without being surrounded by quality peers and people who have already achieved what they want to achieve. And then talking to them about what they want to achieve, even just getting their input, right? And it doesn't have to be just like a mentor who's already achieved what you want to achieve over and over again. It could be your neighbor, could be your spouse, it could be somebody else, and you get different things out of that. But it's the act of talking that's huge. Knowing your numbers, huge. Again, for everybody, no matter what stage you're at. And I think as we grow and we become more and more successful, we become less focused on the right numbers sometimes, which was a big lesson that you learned. And you went through and you even said, hey, holy crap. Like I was okay with finance, but I became really okay with finance when I went through this. Culture, very, very important for you. I believe very important in every one of our entities. Definitely. It's a driving force in our ability to grow, not just in revenue, but as a company, as a team, as a person individually. I think the culture inside of our organizations is important for everything in my life. And then I can't read my handwriting. The list that's
priority.
What do you call it? What is it?
Priority list.
Priority list. Yes, I can't read the word priority. I have such bad handwriting now. But priority list. Yeah. So I love the fact that you do 10. I love the way you categorize the top 3 and then the 7 underneath, and then underneath that as well. I do agree with you. I told you we do top 5s. We've run everything on top 5 lists for the last 20 plus years, and I think it's at the cornerstone of everything that we do. I love the way we do this, and I'm happy to share with you how we break everything down into our daily top 5, and it is a fun process that we've honed. But I see value in a 10. I love the way you laid it out, and I see a lot of value in that. And I agree that 5 is better because 5 keeps you focused more, but there's such a value in expanding it to 10 if you follow the process that you talked about, where the top 3 are real vital. The top 7, the next 7, vital for this week, but not vital for this day.
And the dotted line.
The dotted line.
Below the dotted line. That's so important, because to your point, it frees up your brain by letting it go, putting it on paper, documenting it. It lets your employees know that you care about their opinions and their ideas, and now it's documented for future use.
And it frees up your mental bandwidth to be able to stay focused. Yeah. So, hey, Byron, as a colleague, as a friend, as a brother, I appreciate that you're here. I love the contents. This is tremendous. You help. I'm sorry you went through all that. I'm grateful that you went through it and learned, and that you're now way outside of it. And you're having so many more pains right now because because you're growing so rapidly.
Yeah.
And I love that. I'm so happy for you.
Thank you
for getting through all this and now teaching it, right? So can you share where people could find you? Because I know you have you're starting up a podcast. You have a wonderful message over there about people, helping entrepreneurs get through. It's called the turnaround, right?
Yeah.
Get through the adversity. And I think I do you a disservice by using that word adversity, but why don't you explain it a little bit and then tell people how to find it?
Yeah, well, it originated because I wanted to write a book about my experience of the turnaround. Mm-hmm. Even midway through it, it was one of my EO forum members that suggested, Byron, you got to document what's going on because you're going to get through this and you're going to, you should write a book about it. So I started documenting it. And the book was put on hold when coronavirus hit because my company 5X'd and just the chaos, right? But I thought, well, the
weeks 5X'd.
It's crazy growth. Yeah, it hurts. I told her from the other day, yeah, growing pains or coming, a downward trend, it hurts in both directions.
It does, but it's more exciting when there's a lot of money coming in.
Absolutely. So much rather be on this side of the fence. But I just thought a podcast would be a faster way to leverage what I can share. Mm-hmm. And I think it's an important message of, what happens in a downturn, as long as you have a turnaround plan and you're strategic and you get through it emotionally, what comes at the end is an amazing gift. And so the book is going to be called The Turnaround Gift because there's just a massive gift at the end. The podcast is The Turnaround. Mm-hmm. And it's just talking about the strategies to get through it. Mentally, the strategies to get through it as far as your company and how to pivot, and interviewing some really smart business people that are going through it right now. So between those two, and then threw together a quick website, theturnaroundplan.com. Again, there's nothing to buy on any of this stuff. Yeah. It's just content that's meant to help because so many entrepreneurs, so many friends reached out and helped me during my downturn. It's humbling. It was just the love I felt was just overwhelming. And so I'm trying to give back, but instead of one friend with a downward business, it's most of my friends. So it's tough to reach out to everyone. So I'm hoping the podcast will help us leverage that and, reach more entrepreneurs and help them through this because it is a tough time.
Yeah. Well, I highly suggest everybody goes and listens to it. I've not heard all of them, but I've heard several of them, and it's good. It's from the heart, which is the way it all should be. We're giving content in order to help companies grow, period, the end. It's not like after every single podcast, there should be a pitch. Yeah. So, hey, I'm grateful for this time. Thank you very much for sharing everything with us.
Great. Thank you, Chris.